Good afternoon, John O'Flaherty, the B3 Burner, and the reason I'm holding this bottle of pink champagne is I have a special day for you. This week we celebrate the Cadillac Coupe DeVille's 50th birthday. Okay, well, before we go any further with the car, let's first discuss the pink champagne selection for the day. We have a 2012 Calaveras County Frog's Tooth. Yes, frogs do have teeth. Pink Diamonds Grenache Rosé Sparkling Wine. On the back, it says, frogs inspired Mark Twain to create great stories. They inspired us to create great wines. Frog's Tooth Vineyards, a taste of the foothills. And yes, it even says here, yes, they do have teeth. Frogstooth.com, produced and bottled by FTV of Healdsburg, California. So now with the discussion of the wine, a quick happy birthday to the car. Happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear 1973 Cadillac Coupe DeVille in cotillion white. Happy birthday to you, and many more. So why do I even make a big deal out of this? Certainly there are other more classic cars, like the Model T, like the 57 Chevy, like the 65 Pontiac GTO, the 64 and a half Ford Mustang that have turned 50 years old. And was as big a deal made of those? Well, I don't know. Maybe they were, across the board advertising wise. But the reason this is a big deal is these cars were not saved. These were not, the 70s Fords and GM cars were not beloved like the 60s and 50s were. A lot of these cars were destroyed, didn't survive the gas crisis of 73. They rusted out in the Northeast. Various things occurred that created an attrition rate where there just aren't as many of them around today. So I think the fact that this car is 50 years old and is still on the road in as good a condition as it is speaks volumes as to, one, how well it was taken care of even before I got it, but how lucky we are to still have it as an example at 50 years of age. So, as we don't bash the champagne bottle against the side of the car, because I don't need to worry about paint jobs at this point in the venture. Ignore the barking dogs. The next thing we're going to look at is the proof in the pudding, and the VIN number and the door codes, and I'll decipher those for you on paper, and we'll discuss why we know that this car turns 50 years old this week. Okay, let's start off by looking at the VIN number, and it is very, very, very hard to read, but let's try to make this out. Egads, the glare of the light doesn't help any, does it? 6D47R. I already know what it is, so I have the benefit of just telling you. 3Q 276873. It'd be a lot easier if I go over here. Number 6 means of the 6 GM divisions that existed at the time, because a bunch of them don't now, like Oldsmobile and Pontiac are no longer in existence in 2023. 6 was the Cadillac division. D stood for DeVille, as opposed to a Fleetwood Brougham or like let's say an Eldorado. 47 represents a 2-door hardtop. Hardtop meaning there is no B pillar when you roll down the back window. This is just an open space. Okay, that's 47. R stands for the 472 cubic inch V8 engine. 3 is the model year, not the manufacturing year, but the model year. 1973. Since we don't have a specific born-on date, you have to do a little bit of deductive reasoning and use some common sense there. And I'll go into that more in a little bit. Q is the plant in which it was built. Many GM cars were built in many different locations. Q happens to be Detroit. So this car came from the For Real Motor City. And then finally, the 276,873 is the build series, and it's a Detroit-built C-body. Was it the 276,873rd unit built that year? I do not know. I don't think it's that cut and dry. So that's how to read the VIN code. Okay, the door plate is very hard to read on the driver's side door. So what I'm going to do... Oh, shut up. The damn dogs, they hear my voice and they think I'm coming into their yard. In the upper right-hand corner, it says date of manufacture 573. So we know it was manufactured in May of 73. The only question is the date and or the week, and it doesn't give an exact date. The Ford codes, you could decipher them down to an exact date. This one only gives, and further below, it repeats the VIN number. So not very much information at all. So I consulted a website, and the funny thing is I don't even remember doing this. I thought I got this information off the car. Apparently I didn't. This is really valuable. I got some information from somebody. This is what you decipher from the body code plate. And I can't find it, and I don't think it exists on the car. But if it did, here's the information. We start with a style code. ST stands for style code, and everything to the left, or excuse me, to the right of the ST, this section represents style code. So style code, again, year of manufacture, 1973. 6, it's the 6th division, the Cadillac division. Forgive me, my handwriting in pencil. CD is Coupe DeVille, number 47. There's some overlap between this and the VIN number 47. There's some consistency, 2-door hardtop. Assembly plant, we already know that Q was Detroit plant on the VIN number. This time it says assembly plant FWD, so that must be more specifically where it was assembled. We've lost some brightness. I'm going to try to turn it up a little bit. The body serial number 74,402, which is different than the series number, the build series. So neither of them might have anything to do with when the car was actually, which unit it actually was. BWY stands for body, and that's referring to this. Now, let's move to the second line. We got the trim. TR is trim. I'm going to assume that 326 represents everything having to do with what features came standard, what the owner chose. It might also have to do with the blue brocade seats, like this. Might have been, the indication of that might have been the fact that the interior was blue. Might have been an indication of the 326. Paint, PNT is paint. The exterior paint is 11, cotillion white. And the top is J, which is also white. So that tells us, if I wait for it to focus, that it's a white car with a white top. And if it had white interior, we would call that triple white. I guess because it only has a white body with a white top, that would be called double white. Finally, and this is the big deal, this is why we're doing this video, The born on date. We already know for a fact from the door code that the car was built in May of 73. There's no way it could have been an early model 73 built in May of 72, because the door code that I just showed you earlier, the blue door code, told us it was born in May of 1973. Again, we have May 05, the 5th month of the year, and here's the key. We're not given an exact date, but each letter starting with A, from A to D, as in dog, represents what week of the month it was built. So C would be the 3rd week of the month. So we cannot infer a specific date. The best we can do is know that, well, the 3rd week of the month starts on the 21st and goes through the 27th. So a little caveat, I wasn't thinking straight with my math, and I'm off by a week. I should have celebrated this Monday of last week. The 21st does not start the 3rd week of the month. It ends the 3rd week of the month. 3rd week of the month is 15 through 21. So this car, actually, possible born on dates was not the 21st through the 28th. It was the 15th through the 21st. This C, I don't know what it means. A65 might be another definition for the door, for the body style, the 2-door hardtop. Don't know. This L might mean the blue interior, but that's only a guess, and I don't know what the KI means. But the most important part of this whole puzzle was the date it was made. And that, my friends, is why we bust out the champagne and celebrate this on Sunday, May 21st, 2023. So I'm John O'Flaherty, the B3 burner, and that's it. Cadillac turns 50 years old this week. Hi, John O'Flaherty here again, and one final thing or thought that I forgot to bring up is the delineation of classic versus vintage, or not vintage, but vintage is another definition. I don't know quite what that is, but classic and antique cars. And as more and more time goes by, and we move further past the early 1900s when the automobile was first invented, or late 1800s, I should say, is it necessary to stretch out the definition of what's classic versus what's antique? It always used to be, and still is, that anything 25 years and older is classic, and anything 50 years and older is antique. But we got a bit of a problem with that. 25 years ago from 2023 is now 1998. Does anybody consider anything in the late 90s to be a classic car, in the sense of like a 57 Chevy used to be back in the 70s and 80s? Even more so, would you consider a car like mine, a 1973 Cadillac Coupe DeVille, to be an antique simply because it's 50 years old? When I think of antique car, I think of Model Ts. I think of cars going back to the 1910s, which now is 110 years ago. So we maybe need to stretch out our definitions of classic and antique, or come up with other words to describe cars that are more recent in history, or else those year break-offs are going to start to seem really exaggerated and ridiculous. Just my final thought, just my own opinion, and you take care.